Welcome to How to Draw Like Jdog. You clicked on this video either because you're interested in how to draw like me, or you're perhaps a supportive friend. Either way, I'm glad you're here. Step one of any drawing is to have an idea. This is arguably the hardest part. We're going to keep it simple in this video, and we're just going to draw a bust of an OC. Picking one at random, today we'll be drawing Uriel. Worried that drawing one of my own Cs would be a bad way to show my style, we will also be drawing a random person from Pinterest. This works out because I can show you two different art programs, Procreate and Clip Studio Paint. So let's get started with a sketch. So I actually didn't like this drawing that much, but that's okay. We're just going to speed through it. Alright, here you can see the random portrait I've selected from Pinterest. Now let's get started. Step one, sketching. Always pick a green. I don't know why this is, but you've got to sketch in green. I heard somewhere that colors like blue and black seem very permanent, and you don't want to have your sketch feel permanent. And so to avoid this, I picked a color that I've never really had a good pen in, and that would be green. You'll see that I start by labeling this as step one sketch. I will forget to label the rest of the steps throughout this video, so take that with a grain of salt. Okay, you're going to want to start by drawing a circle. This is a very important circle that you have to draw at least 4 times before you commit to one. You see here, I like this circle. And the thing about this circle is that it really doesn't matter because we're just going to ignore it as we continue to draw anyways. So you're going to turn the circle into an oval. Very important to have an oval shape for the face. You may say, Jill, not all faces are ovals. Some people have square jaws or whatever. But in my world, everyone has an oval for a face. So we're just going to start like that. The ears, also very ovular. And ovular? Is that a word? Anyways. And you see I just draw a neck. Alright, so this is a 2-part sketch because I've laid down a basic sketch of what the head looks like. Now I need to sketch out where I want my face to be. So I'm drawing in a bit of a hairline up there. And starting with the most important part, the nose. I feel like the nose is like the anchor of the face. Like it keeps everything else in place. So once you can place the nose, you can place everything else. I started with the bridge of the nose. I don't know if that's the anatomy, but like the little right in the middle of the face, the little part of a K. And then we do a little W down on the bottom for the nose. From the nose, we go down to the lips. The lips are kind of like a V, an M, and a U, kind of all spread out. And then we're refining up the chin a little to be less oval. I can't describe what shape it is now other than face shape. You're going to want to try and create this face shape in your own recreation of this. The eyebrows connect to the top of the nose, as discussed earlier. And we've got some nice arched eyebrows in this photo, so I'm trying to copy that and getting the right thickness and stuff. The eyes. It'll take me a second to do the eyes. We're going to zoom in for this one. We want to get that nice almondy shape without it looking too cartoony, so just a little bit of a curve, and then adding the eyes. I want to get that lower lash line because she's got a prominent lower lash in this, and I decided that this isn't good enough, and I am going to erase this and try again. Control Z is always your friend. You can always undo things. You can always erase things. Now, with the lower lash line, that's not necessarily something I always do, so it looks a little weird to me right now. I draw this almond-shaped eye on the side, and that's just going to be a reminder to myself of that's the shape we're trying to go for. I think about adding some texture to the nose, but I decide against it. I'm going to zoom out, refocus, and I think we move on to the hair next. Nope. As I said, we're ignoring that circle. So we've drawn a hairline, and I've decided actually the skull is going to be where the hairline ends. And I've drawn out what the rest of the skull looks like in my mind. And now I'm redrawing the body to kind of match it better. The thing about the sketch is that anything goes. So if you don't like something, change it. Okay, ears coming in. I totally ignored the ears I drew earlier, but you can see they still have that kind of ovally tilted on an axis shape. Now we're coming in on the hair with a slightly larger brush, so we were focusing less on details like we were with the eyes, and now we're just going for general shape. I try to match the swoopy movements of the hair. Whenever there's like a pocket created by the hair where light is coming through, I like to leave that little pocket, but mostly swoopy shapes. I don't know how to explain what I do, I just kind of do it. And you might be saying, hey, that's not what her hair looks like. And you know what? I kind of agree, but I got the vibe. I got the essence. Alright, now we're gonna make this a little opaque so that transparent is what I was looking for. We're gonna make it a little transparent because we're moving from the sketch into the skin. I start by color picking the skin tone, and ooh, that's light for her. She is, I guess, that white in the photo, but it doesn't feel right. But I'm going to start with this color anyways. So what you want to do is you're going to block out the face shape. You can block out the hairline with hair or without hair because we're going to probably draw over it again later anyways. You want to make sure you get that sort of oval face shape in, but also it's kind of pointy where a chin is. It's not entirely an oval until I make it more of an oval. Okay. Get the ear in and your face, and this is one layer. We're going to block out the face, and now we're going to fill it in. Now that we've got it filled in, that's our base for the face. We're going to want to start doing details. I'm thinking about color picking. I'm really thinking about it, but I'm going to show you my method. You go down a little 45-degree angle from your color, and you go a little bit down, and then you nudge it a little bit to be more red, and then you draw, and bam, that is your shade color. It's got a nice contrast with the skin. And so you turn off your head layer, and you're going to start tracing out the face details, like where the nose is, where the eyes are, and where the lips are. It doesn't have to be exact, you just want to get the idea down, because we can always change this again. Just start things over. So here I'm selecting everything and then dumping a different color in. What I should have done was alpha lock it and then select everything to dump a color in, because I had to mess with my settings for selections to get it to select all the pixels. I wouldn't have to do that if I had just alpha locked. But now that we've changed the color, our contrast color is too light. So I think about it again. I might color pick, but no, I'm not going to color pick. I am going to, oh, never mind, I'm color picking. I thought this mid-tone was a little too dark. And bam, now this is the mid-tone we are using for this photo. This feels right at this point. This mid-tone, this contrast tone, is now too light. How am I going to fix that? We're going to alpha lock. We're going to dump a different color in. And I didn't like how that color was, so I made it more red. Now, what's next? We're going to start in with some shading. I take the contrasty color, I set a layer to 50%, I draw a circle and then I color pick that 50% circle to get a color that's halfway between them. And now I'm going to start blocking out the shapes of the nose. So to me, a nose is kind of like a pyramid. It's got like points and sides, you know? So you want to think about the front face of the nose and how that's gaining light and how the other faces are getting in shadow a little bit is kind of how I think about it. You see, I do this, and then I look at the reference photo, and I see her nose is not as straight. There's a little wideness, and I missed that, so I add that back in. And now I'm going to take this mid-tone, and nope, not taking the mid-tone. I'm doing her little eye bag near the ramp. I don't know what the anatomy's called, bridge of the nose, but just doing a little sort of contrasty point that you can see in her reference photo. Now I'm blocking out where the eyes are in my darkest skin tone just to have a reference point for them. And I'm going to start doing the eyelids. She's got pretty hooded eyes. I don't know anatomy, but they seem pretty dark, so I'm going to shade them in. You want to keep the center of the eyelid be highlighted a little bit, and the sides have dark on it. That's what you do with eyeshadow, at least. So you darken up those sides and leave a little spot of highlight in the middle, and you create the shape of the eye that way. Alright, next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to give her contour. She's got nice cheekbones, so we're going to accentuate that with just taking this plane of her face that was in shadow and adding shadow to it. The face is not a pyramid. It's a very complex shape, but you can think of it the same way as light's coming from one side, and one side's going to be a little bit more in shadow, so just kind of drawing where that cheek kind of gradient would happen. The ear's also in shadow, so we'll be coloring that in. You might be wondering, Jill, I can't see the layers you're doing because your little PNG tubers in front of it. That's too bad. Because you don't really need all these layers. You could do this in one. It's just sometimes you want to put stuff behind and sometimes you want to put stuff in front, and that's when you get many layers happening. So now we're adding the neck. I'm just taking the darkest color and putting it under, and then the second darkest color and putting it under that to kind of create the shape of her neck. There's kind of like a V shape that goes on with the neck. And just because of the lighting in this, I've put in this weird shape. You always want to use weird shapes whenever you can. The more weird shapes you can put in your art, I think the better it's going to look. I use my fill tool, but because I messed up the settings earlier, I have to go in and color by hand anyways. Sharpening out that neck shadow again and adding the lightest portion of the neck in the mid-tone that we chose for the skin. Filling it in and coloring it back in again because of my weird settings. The neck has muscles, and I noticed hers doing stuff, so I added in another shadow on the neck. I find what layer things are on, and I'm going to add lips. Yeah, sometimes I color the bottom lip, sometimes I leave it skin toned. It depends on the character, how femme they are. It changes depending on how I feel. Alright, now you see I'm going and color picking that lightest skin tone again. We're going to go ahead and use that for highlights. So, a big part of her cheek and just kind of the side of her face is going to get highlighted because we're getting light from that direction. You might be wondering, how do I decide what direction light comes from? And I don't really care that much often. I just kind of put in light where it seems like it would look cool. But if you want, you can draw a little sun in the corner of your drawing just so you know where the light's coming from. I rarely do this. What you want to do with the highlight is maybe put a little highlight on the tip of the nose. That's a spot that usually gets highlighted. And you want to put a little highlight on the cupid's bow of the lips. I think it just makes him pop out more. You would get a little bit of a highlight there in real life, but not as much as this, depending on how much skincare you have on, I guess. You can also do a little highlight on the brow bone sometimes, but I find with my art style that it becomes a little too much in the eye area. Unless it's like the side of the face, like this one has the brow bone a little bit going. Alright, speaking of brows, we're getting in a dark color for the hair. So we're going to zoom in on this face, and we're going to start drawing in eyebrows. This you're going to want to do on a new layer. I like to keep at least the skin and hair on separate layers, for sure, but you'll see in the layers behind me that I did a lot of different layers for the skin on this one. One thing I love about Clip Studio Paint is you can take the tool that you're using and turn it to be transparent and draw it with transparency. That's how I was able to erase the little section of the eyebrow that you just saw. Now we're drawing in the eyes. You can kind of see my eye drawing shape there earlier from outside, so I didn't have to turn off the layer to see what the eye shape looks like. That's a new thing I'm trying out. But essentially I'm trying to draw in this almond shape, and I'm trying to make her expression match the reference photo. It looks pretty good, but it could be better, so I'm going to go in with a smaller brush and add the lash line on the bottom there. If I do this, I like to add 2 to 3 lashes at the bottom. Usually. Feels right to me. And then 1 lash accentuation at the top usually feels right just about. At this point, I've decided there is not enough contrast on the face now that I've put this dark on it. So I'm going to make an even darker skin tone to add a little bit more contrast. As you can see, I'm turning layers on and off just to find a spot where it won't interrupt and not get in the way too much. So I start out with this. I fiddle with the color a little bit until I find a dark tone that isn't too red and isn't too dark, but is still redder and darker than the rest of the face. So I start with adding the little nose holes, nostrils, if you will, and deepening the sort of eye nook of the nose, because it's really accentuated in this photo I found. And then I think the chin could use a little bit more depth, so we're going to add her chin line in this dark color. And now I think we go into the ear. Nope, we go to the lips. The lips also need the middle to be darker. And that looks just about right to me. Now I move on to the ear. Because it's in a slightly shaded region, I'm using the slightly shaded colors. And you kind of want to draw a weird S and then make the top part of the S into a weird B. That is the shapes you kind of want to go for in a ear Jdog style. As always, futz around with it as much as needed. A lot of futzing is done to find shapes. We're going to go in and fill in the whites of her eyes. I don't tend to use a strict white, so you see me going with a gray, and I'll be shading with an even more gray to get a little more, I don't know, shape in those eyes. Really make it pop a little bit more, in my opinion. I don't know, it's a little detail. I like it. Okay, zooming back out. I think that the eyes could be more brown. I go ahead and change this, but I think I change it back later. So, because I didn't actually color pick this color, I just kind of made it up. So, once I put the hair in, I see that it doesn't vibe, but we'll see that later. But if I were to color in an eye, that's how I would do it if a person didn't have just black eyes. Now, you may be wondering, Jill, you didn't really use black, you color picked from the photo. And that's pretty much true. Usually, when drawing a character, I will use the darkest color of their hair for both eyebrows and eyelashes, unless they're very blonde. If they're very blonde, I will pick a dark brownish color. Usually very desaturated and kind of looks black, but actually isn't black. Again, it's like the true white for the whites of the eyes things. I don't like using true black for the eyelashes. And now we're going to start putting the shape of the hair in. We're doing this in a new layer behind everything. And we're just getting the shape in, blocked in. Sometimes, especially with characters with shorter hair, I like to think about the volume that the hair is taking up. But with characters with longer hair like this, that can be kind of time consuming. So with this, I'm just thinking about the flat 2D shape that's being taken up. And we'll start to think about more 3D stuff later. But yeah, just following the sketch here. Doesn't matter how loose the lines are as long as they connect, because we're going to take our magic wand tool, select everything outside of it, and voila, dump a color in. But you realize there's a little blip at the bottom where there was supposed to be a cutout, so I go in and grab that and make sure that it is cut out of the hair, and we have that little light peeking through. So, now we've got the back of her hair in. Her forehead could use some help. So we're going to move the sketch all the way up, just to see where the forehead should be at, and we're going to bring her hairline down. You're going to want to do like a little jagged W shape most of the time is how I accentuate it. But, I mean, any of these shapes are just shapes. So, just kind of follow your heart. But Jill, this is supposed to be an instructional video of how to do it like you. I cannot teach you how to have my heart, is the unfortunate thing. I don't think while drawing, I just do. So, sometimes things just happen. And that's okay. And you may also be thinking at this point, we're pretty far into the drawing process, and I wouldn't say that that is the same person as in the reference photo. And to that, I say, you might be right. I wasn't necessarily trying to do a one-to-one of the reference photo. I just didn't want to draw one of my own OCs because I thought, well, that's going to be too much of falling on my, usual tactics. I don't know. Alright, so I color pick a highlight color from the photo, and quickly I'm going to realize, oh, that is too bright. So I'm going to take it down, do my little 50% trick, see that that contrast seems okay to me, and I'm going to color pick that and start drawing in the highlights on a full opacity layer. You're going to want to think a little bit about how the shape of the hair is like what's in the front, what's in the back. It's harder to do with curly hair because curly hair has hair going everywhere, whereas straight hair can be a little bit more segmented in these kind of highlights. So you're going to just want to follow your heart, as I said earlier, and throw highlights in. Show the contours of the hair, where it's kind of curling back, where it's curling forward. Try and show some movement, show some shape. or imply shape that isn't actually there. So with this top part of her head, I'm trying to show the flowing back motion that it's doing. And I think I do a pretty decent job of getting those highlights in places I like them. You see me going back in with drawing transparency, also known as erasing. Alright, now I've decided to fix some small mistakes. And so I just usually make a layer on top and start drawing on that layer with whatever color I need, disregarding sort of the layers I have below and where they would normally go. So right now we're fixing up some hairline shapes that I thought were too stark, and thinning out some of the lines a little bit. We're also going to turn off those brown eyes now, because I just decided that I liked the look with her hair color matching the eyes a little bit better. And one detail I wanted to change a little bit was her lips are a little more red in the reference photo, so I'm going to try and match that. I'm going to throw some red on there and see what blending layer modes can do for me. Oh, that's not what I wanted. That's way too pink, I think. Oh, that's even worse. Okay, what if we try that? Still quite pink. Okay. We can try this or that. And okay, that's not terrible. That's pretty bad. You just kind of, experiment with something that works. Here it is just on low opacity on a normal layer. And I think, hey, that looks pretty neat. That's pretty good. Do the same thing with darken. Turn it up a little bit. And I think, hey, I think that's where we want to be. That's pretty good. Alright, we're going in and we're fixing her cheek shape because I feel like it doesn't match the photo. It's not necessarily going to get much better, but we can take that hair and just kind of carve out the jaw a little bit and make sure it's rounded. And I still don't think it looks like the same person, and that is okay. Art is a process, and sometimes that process is doing things wrong. But maybe if I add the ear in, it'll look more like her. We're deciding to add in the earrings. Maybe that will make her look more like her. And I think this is just about the last detail I add. We go in, we try and fix the chin shape a little bit more. We go in, we make the eyes a little bit more rounded. And then we mess around with highlights, eye shines, if you will. I don't like them. I tried, I think, 3 sets out, and I don't really like any of them. But yeah, that's it. Well, that was how to draw like Jill. If you have any questions, please leave a comment. And if you have any comments, please leave a question. I don't know. Just tell me what you want. I'll make another video.